Sometimes the dream realm is loud, full of star highways and crashing waves. And sometimes it is so quiet you can hear the roots growing beneath the soil. Big Daddy and Ba were sound asleep at the edge of the bioluminescent lagoon, snoring a soft, steady rhythm. Ba sat beside him, her head pillowed on her arms. My loves were safe. The dream realm had them. But Nik Flick was wide awake. She sat cross-legged on the soft moss. Her purple backpack pulsed with a faint neon green glow. She watched the glowing leafcutter ants march in a perfect, organized line across the damp earth. They had returned to her, a little line of glowing green stars. "I can't sleep," Nik Flick whispered. Above her, a shadow detached itself from the canopy. It dropped silently, landing on the moss without a single sound. It was Yari, the gentle giant of the green realm. He didn't say a word. He just smiled, his dark eyes catching the starlight, and held out his hand. "Come." Nik Flick took his hand. He led her away from the lagoon, deeper into the towering banyan trees. They stopped in front of a massive knot of roots. It looked solid, impenetrable. But Yari reached out and traced a glowing line along the wood. The roots slowly parted, groaning like old wood ships, revealing a passage just tall enough for a 10-year-old girl. A tree door. "Daddy can't fit in there." Yari did not speak, but his thought reached her, soft as moss. This is not a path for fathers. This is for the small ones, the ones who still listen. Nik Flick took a deep breath. She stepped through the door. The inner canopy was the deep, secret heart of the green realm. The air itself seemed to glow with floating, luminous jellyfish spores, drifting in the gentle currents. "It's beautiful," Nik Flick breathed. "It is our home," a new voice said. From the shadows of the leaves stepped 3 more children. "I am Kiri," the feathered girl said. She stood tall, precise, and regal, the watcher. "I'm Lumi," the younger girl said, giggling. She practically danced as she spoke, the joyful trickster. "And I am Toko," the older boy rumbled, slow, deliberate, and grounded, the architect. "I'm Nik Flick," Nik Flick said, stepping forward. "We know who you are," Kiri said. "Yari told us about the girl who watered the seed." Kiri closed her eyes. Her silver paint flared. In a seamless, fluid motion that looked like watercolors spilling across a canvas, the 12-year-old girl stretched out her arms, and the feathers woven into her hair seemed to consume her. In her place stood a colossal 4-winged azure owl. "Watch this," Lumi squealed before diving. Lumi laughed, a bright bubbling sound. She dove off the branch into the empty air, and halfway down, her form rippled and shifted. She became a brilliant, glowing river otter, swimming through the humid air currents as if they were water, looping around the glowing lily pads. "Catch me if you can." "The wood is strong here," Toko rumbled. Toko merely crossed his arms and lowered his head. His woven bark expanded, hardening, shifting into heavy plates. He became a massive, moss-covered beetle, his gold markings glowing steadily. He tapped a heavy claw against the wood, a sound like a drum. "I am the shield." And Yari smiled his warm, ancient smile and grew. He expanded into the colossal mythical jaguar, his coat shifting with gold and shadow, his face paint pattern integrated perfectly into his fur markings. He lowered his massive head and purred, a sound that shook the leaves. Nik Flick stood alone on the branch. She looked at her own hands, just normal human hands. "I can't do that," Nik Flick said softly. "I'm just me." "You do not need to change," Yari's voice echoed in her mind, a deep resonance from the giant jaguar. "You only need to ride." She buried her hands in his thick mane. Lumi the otter swam through the air in joyful circles around them, while Toko the beetle marched steadily along the thickest branches, blazing a trail. They took off. It was a soaring, sweeping journey through the upper canopy. Nik Flick held tight to Yari's fur, the wind rushing past her ears, pulling her pigtails back. They passed waterfalls of glowing pollen, groves of singing orchids and hollow trees filled with sleeping starlight. Nothing but sky and starlight below them. It was perfect. Until they reached the Starlight Spring. The spring was the heart of the canopy, a massive basin where the glowing, bioluminescent water gathered before flowing down to the rest of the jungle. But the basin was dry. The shapeshifters shifted back into their human forms, landing lightly beside Nik Flick. "The spring is choked," Toko said, his voice heavy. "The lower jungle will dry out." "We must break it," Kiri said, her silver eyes narrowed. "I will cut the vines." She shifted instantly back into the Azure Owl and dove at the fern, her massive talons extended, trying to cut the vines. But the fern was ancient and frightened. As her talons raked across the wood, the vines snapped tighter, pulling the knot even more impossibly close. The glowing ant scurried across the wood to spell a single word: "No." He shifted into the jaguar and approached the knot. He dug his massive claws into the earth and bit into the thickest vine, using his incredible strength to pull. But the fern only groaned and tightened further, thorns digging into the wood. Lumi tried to slip through as the otter, but the gaps were too tight. Toko tried to wedge his heavy beetle shell between the roots to pry them apart, but the fern squeezed so hard he was forced to retreat. They stood panting, returning to their human forms. "It's a knot," Nik Flick said. "When you pull on a knot, it just gets tighter. You can't force it." She stepped forward. Yari reached out. The glowing ants on her backpack scrambled to spell a frantic warning. "Wait, thorns." "It's okay," she said. Nik Flick walked toward the massive tangle of roots. She stopped a step away. She didn't have claws or wings. She just had her hands and her quiet. She stepped closer, and the panicked fern shivered. The thorns slowly retracted as she approached. Nik Flick placed her hands on the smooth, warm bark. She didn't pull, she didn't push. She closed her eyes and simply listened. She felt the panicked, racing pulse of the plant through her palms. "It's okay," Nik Flick whispered to the wood. "You don't have to hold on so tight. You're safe." She stroked the bark, a slow, soothing rhythm. She breathed deeply, and the plant seemed to match her breath. "Let go," she whispered. The tight, groaning tension in the wood eased. With a deep, long sigh like wind through dry leaves, the massive knot uncoiled. The vines slid apart, unwinding their defensive embrace. And the water flowed. A brilliant, rushing torrent of glowing cyan and gold water burst forth, filling the basin and spilling over the edge, cascading down to feed the lower jungle. The light in the canopy flared, brighter and more beautiful than before. Nik Flick stepped back, her hands covered in glowing water. The four shapeshifters stood in absolute awe. They looked at the uncoiled fern, and then at the girl in the red sneakers. "The water is so beautiful," Lumi sighed as the pool filled. "I just listened," Nik Flick said. "I didn't have anything else to use. We have claws to fight. We have wings to fly. We have shells to defend. You do not need to change to be strong. You just needed to be you." Yari shifted into his jaguar form, providing a warm wall of fur against the night air. Nik Flick leaned against his flank. Kiri the owl perched above them. Nik Flick closed her eyes, feeling the steady, rhythmic breathing of the jaguar beneath her. She wasn't a shapeshifter. She couldn't fly, but she belonged. And they were together,